Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello there. We have a great episode for you today. Sarah, Baillie, and I together interviewed Dr Afsoon Ghazvinian and had a really great conversation that follows on nicely from the podcast that we recently did that was focused on the new corporate report that came out of a company called Vodafone in Europe. And Sarah and I talked a lot about the need for discussions around perimenopause and menopause to become part of the mainstream corporate culture. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Ghazvinian. Dr. Afsoon Ghazvinian is the founder and CEO of Revis, an education and consulting company for female entrepreneurs, corporates, and organizations. As an executive coach and change strategist for menopause in the workplace, she's on a mission to make menopause a mainstream conversation by providing adequate awareness, education, and organizational policies to acknowledge the specific needs of millions of women going through menopause in the workplace worldwide. Afsoon is an innovative and solution-focused functional medicine practitioner and a doctor of pharmacy. She's worked with companies all over the world promoting health and wellness in workplaces and coached hundreds of women leaders and entrepreneurs to live in optimum health and vitality as they transition to menopause. She's also a mom of four, two of her own, a 27-year-old and a 31-year-old, and their spouses. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. I think, as I said, it's a really great follow-on chat from the last episode that we did that's focused in on the need for more of this missing conversation to be happening in the corporate world. Hi, I'm so happy that you're here, Afsoon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Sarah and Wendy, for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you about this topic. We had recorded an episode which aired before this one on where we had a discussion around some of the same things I think we're going to talk about today that stemmed from a recent report that I know you've seen that came from a corporation called Vodafone, which is based, I think, in the UK and Africa, if I have that right. And before we get started, what I want to do is just recap some of the salient statistics from that report around women in the corporate world and how menopause and perimenopause is affecting and impacting them so that we can use that as a bit of a launching off point for our conversation today. So if you didn't listen to that episode, or if you did and you've forgotten this, here's what you need to know. So Vodafone did research. We don't have the details on how the research was done, but they did research, and the numbers that came in on the research are really eye-opening, I think. So there's lots more than what I'm going to summarize right now, but here are the ones that we wanted to kind of highlight again. So 62% of women who experienced menopausal symptoms, hormonal symptoms at work, found that impacted them at work. 33% of them, those women, hid it. So did not feel comfortable raising it. 44% were too embarrassed to raise it. So they asked, I guess, two separate questions there: who was hiding it and who was too embarrassed to raise it. And then 66% of the women I think this is the women, Sarah, you can clarify this, the women who experienced those hormonal symptoms felt that there should be more workplace support around that, which is pretty shocking. But also, just one more time, let me say, Vodafone, we think you're amazing for putting this report out. It's the first one that we have seen. There may be others, and you may be aware of these, Afsoon, but it's the first one that Sarah and I had seen in the corporate world that was as robust as this, that actually really identified this as a serious and important area of corporate wellness and something that needed to be paid attention to. Yes. So I guess the question that I have for you first, maybe you can tell people what is the work that you do around this?
Basically, this has been a work that evolved over time for me. As a healthcare professional, as a senior pharmacist for many years, I kind of pivoted towards functional medicine and holistic health. And, this is, as with many other professionals going through their personal journey, that puts them through the same path and kind of opens our eyes on the importance of, some of the issues that we may not have been aware of as much. And it was the same for me. Once I crossed menopause myself about, 6 years ago, and sort of understood the impact that it has on us as women, kind of experienced all of the physical, emotional, social effects that it has on us as an individual, and especially if you are a professional woman, kind of juggling work, family, and your health. It really, gets into very challenging, navigation for us. And I realized that even as a healthcare professional, I didn't learn anything about it in school myself. There was no subject that really gave us tools or understanding that what it was. And, it took me some time to go through the whole, understanding, researching. And as I was going through my own kind of shifting towards functional medicine, and I got my basically getting certified as a practitioner, this became my focus of work, just to support women during this time. And as I kind of, did all of those practices myself and with the clients that I worked with, I sort of came up with the whole sort of protocol that helps women in this time. And especially if the women are like busy women, leaders, managers, because this is a time that, as you know, usually women are pivoting towards, their peak of their career, and they're kind of in between a lot of pressure. So that made my interest really peak towards, supporting women that are seeing all these challenges, and at the same time, they have so much more kind of bombarded to them as far as where they are in life as well.
Right, right. So we want to focus today on a discussion around how menopause and perimenopause are impacting women in the corporate world. And I know that that's something that you have spent some time learning about and researching, and you have some ideas on that. So if we go back to those statistics in that Vodafone report, why do you think it is that, 44% of women are too embarrassed to talk about their menopausal symptoms, and 33% of women impacted are hiding it? This really is not part of the wellness conversation broadly in North America anyway, when we're talking about corporate wellness.
Exactly. And actually, through the research that I've done, there are a lot of those statistics that are very much in line with what you just described. I have put them together in a white paper that maybe we can put the link for the audience to take a look at. And,
sure,
the same, it's been much more center of attention for the past few years in the UK. We do have more attention from the government, from the companies to start this support for women, but we don't still have any discussions when we're looking at North America, when you're looking at US, Canada, and Asia, which I'm working with some of the previous clients that I had in Singapore and in Asia. So there is a lot for us to do. And the reason for that I can see is that, we know that how much difficulties women have already. Like there is that, areas that women still don't have the equality and, the inclusion in what they still, they have the right to, and all of those things are not quite a playing field for them. And, women feel that they are, this discussion will basically expose them to more sexism and racism and, kind of, especially if they are in a male-dominated environment.
Yeah.
And, this is something that they would feel like, if they bring it up, it might bring up, the fact that they may not be kind of, performing at their 100%, or they're getting to some age that they may not be as fully productive as they were before. So, and it was interesting that in some of the discussions that I have with very high level women in their workplace, they were telling me that, we're sitting down they're leading a whole group of, techie, high level, younger male, female in a team, and they're the leader. And as they're sitting down, they're searching for their words. They are, basically just sweating, through their clothes, and they're feeling awful inside. But they said that the last thing in my mind that I want to say to the people that are, that I'm sitting with is that, I'm going through hot flashes, or I'm not feeling so well. And this is really, really disturbing to hear, and it really need to change.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Sarah and I we had conversations about this in that last podcast episode, and we talk about this all the time because we're friends as well. So we hang out outside of the podcast.
Awesome.
And we were talking about the fact that, Sarah's had some patients who've recounted exactly that same thing to her. And I've had that happen to me on Zoom calls in the last couple of years, where I've been presenting and I can just see my face getting redder and redder as the call goes on, and I'm sweating, and I'm forgetting words and having to cover for myself. And I think that's a really common phenomenon. Sarah, do you remember the statistics, or just generally the statistics around how many women are going through? Remember that shocking number?
I think the US numbers are like 61 million. And I think 4.5 million in the UK. So you can put Canada somewhere in between those. But it's remarkable how many women, and that's I think those numbers might just be for actual menopause, and may not include perimenopause, which for so many women, they don't even realize they're in perimenopause if it starts early. And that they're not cognizant of the fact that these maybe searching for words, or hot flashes and poor sleep and all the things that can impact your performance at work, that may actually be part of a hormonal transition, that they actually really start to, it really wears on their confidence. They start to feel that they're underperforming, that they're not able to keep up, that they, it's in some cases have to take stress leave. And I think if they had the information early around perimenopause and menopause and the transition, then they would be well equipped to be able to bring those concerns to the people that can help them create change within their environment. But I think that a lot of women don't even know, and I think that's part of the problem. So those numbers reflect menopause, actual women in menopause, but I suspect the numbers are much higher if you think about the transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree, Afsoon?
For sure. And, this is a very long transition. A lot of time we don't realize that how perimenopause, that the word has just actually been coined just a few years ago. We never had even the word perimenopause. And, we didn't know about it at all going through. So certainly it is a very huge gap between knowledge and sort of getting these women. And I think what is so important, other than, realizing that they're going through this stage and how to manage that, is how to get themselves really physically, emotionally, and mentally ready to really go in this transition with harmony, because, our bodies are changing. This is actually a natural phenomenon. This is something that is, I call it the miracle of midlife. There's so many good things happening for women. And, to me, nature doesn't, make a mistake. We've gone through this first period of our lives, and now we're transitioning to the next. So I find that, first we have to sort of kind of internalize and understand that this is natural. This is, we're not going crazy. A lot of women at this time, they think, I thought I'm going crazy, So I just, these things are so important that, we bring it out to light, and we emphasize on the fact that, okay, this is now also is not our mama's or grandmama's menopause anymore. We are in a kind of a different situation. We are in very stressful environment, as women going through perimenopause all the way to menopause that can last up to 14 years for some women. This is huge. So this understanding is so important to how to get ourselves ready emotionally, be ready for that disconnect from the time that we are, we can give birth, we have all, those, time of our life, and now we're getting into the next stage, kind of a birth canal, so to speak. So emotionally, so important for women to be ready and, for it, because we all go through it. And, physically, it's so important to have those strategies that how we can deal with these changes in our metabolism. Of course, metabolism changes, our mindset changes, our body physically changes, the way that we handle things before is not the same. So how do we work with it in harmony? And these are things that we need to have it as toolbox in our, life skill, I call it, that nobody teaches us, unfortunately.
So in the corporate world, if we're talking about how this is impacting what's happening in the corporate world, then it would be really important for companies to start supporting women to understand this process, say at 40, rather than waiting until women are in menopause already experiencing the symptoms. That it should be part of their corporate wellness package to start to support not only with good insurance benefits, for example, so that women can see practitioners that might support them, but also to have education available and counselors, people who are on a team, a wellness team, that maybe be able to support women in that educational process so that they are ready and they understand maybe the challenges that they might have going forward.
Absolutely. And something that I might add to that is you just mentioned, having mentors and having sort of, counselors, and also a community that these women can kind of share their experiences and see how, the strategies that they are putting into place, how are they helping them? What are the challenges as they are in the workplace? Because as we know, some of these women, the changes that women go through is just phenomenal. I think if it wasn't for women being so resilient, I don't know how we are just standing around and even walking and functioning, with this situation, because the fact that when I talk to women, a lot of them, they may not be even, had a good night's sleep for months, it's very difficult. Kind of start that community of support and understanding what helps, what strategies help women, deal with them and sort of get that conversation going. And I think the support, a lot of times community can be like a cure as well. So have them be able to have those discussions, and, of course, having mentors and counselors who can bring in those, changes and tools that women can use, and just, embrace it and help them really get ready and just come out of it so much more resilient and so much more energy and vitality than before, even, because this is amazing, the power and the resilience that women have. We just have to realize it and unleash it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. One of the things Sarah and I are pretty passionate about is creating a community and opening up the conversation around this, which is one of the reasons, obviously, why we have you on today. And we absolutely both believe in the power of shared story and community around everything. But in particular, this topic, because it is so, this is not just in the corporate world that we're not talking about this. We're not talking about this anywhere, except this podcast here. No, it is becoming more of, and this is great. It is becoming more more common topic of conversation, but it is still pretty quiet, and there is not a lot of community around this. So if we're talking about the corporate world, what kind of, how does a corporation go about helping to get this missing conversation started in the workplace? How does that even start? What do you recommend when you're working with companies on this?
I think it starts initially with awareness, as anything else. And this is something that they have to realize, that this is like any other marginalized group in the workplace. This is another marginalized group. And it's not like, I can go up to people and say, as a woman, I'm a woman, or I am a Middle Eastern woman. These are things that we have to really realize that, okay, we need to start paying attention and start supporting and start including. I think the conversation has to be of inclusion, and really understanding that this is yet another, so the awareness is at the very beginning of the conversation. And I think it's just not that only affects women and their health and all that, it affects the whole culture of work, because, I think management themselves, whether being in this marginalized group or not, they need to start understanding what it is all about. It's not that we just, educate women. Basically, the whole culture has to be understood, from the top ladders, everybody has to know what this is, how to deal with it as far as when it comes down to the management ladder in the company. So how is company actually, what are the policies? How is it that we deal with it? What do we put in place to support these women? And once that's set up, then we can start, sort of going.
So education is the first, awareness and education is the first step. And then from there, it's a matter of actually starting to weave this into the corporate culture, probably starting in the corporate wellness, well-being, HR realm is my guess.
Yes.
Sarah, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I was just thinking about how does one break a taboo? The taboo of talking about women aging, the taboo of talking about anything to do with hormones in a corporate culture seems antithetical to the model of corporate culture, talking about anything that has to do. So I was just wondering about how one goes about starting with breaking those taboos, but I guess that's a bigger societal issue. I'm trying to change everything at once. And I guess, education is probably it's the only place to start, really.
Well, don't you think somebody has to speak up? I mean, I feel like the first step in this, I don't think the education happens until someone steps up and says, this is a problem.
Yeah.
We do not know enough about this. This is a problem. So I think it's always going to take the one voice.
Yeah.
And we encouraged this on the last podcast where we were talking about the Vodafone report, but I'm going to say it again. If you're in a position at your company to speak up, speak up. Speak up. And, when Afsoon was talking about how this can be as long as a 14-year period for people, I was thinking, how is this different from some kind of a chronic condition that we would make other, accommodations for people who are, if someone is struggling with this for a long period of time, it does not have to be 14 years. Even the last 2 years for me, as I've talked about on this podcast, have been incredibly challenging from a physical wellness perspective, sleep deprivation, all the rest of it. We should be accommodating for this. We should be treating this like any other physiological and or mental health condition, and supporting employees on this. But somebody has to speak up. Nothing is going to, as somebody who comes from the corporate world, nothing happens unless someone has the courage to say, what about this? That's what I think.
Afsoon, have you ever talked to any your corporate groups about how to create like a script around that, how to create the language to use if you want to bring this information forward? Do you coach people on how to start the conversation in their own businesses?
I have, and I think the script, if any script or any basically way of conversation, I found that it has to become, we have to first internalize it, and sort of understand as women we have to accept it first. This is where I have come to when I've been communicating with women. This is also the beginning of the conversation. It hasn't been long that I have been in communication with women on the ground. So sort of what has to happen, but just because it's such a difficult taboo in the workplace that has been really rooted in the culture, I think us as women, we have to start realizing that, those basically the values that we hold, and, just kind of understand that this is something that we can start talking about, make it in a normalized conversation, because it is very tough, as you just mentioned, and just bring it up. It has been the biggest challenge so far for women to actually raise their hand and say, okay, I am in this situation and I would love to have this, educational session or this, that is offered by the workplace. And a lot of times women wonder, even if the workplace starts to offer such an educational group or a workshop, would women really sign up for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, this is a place, I'm obviously coming from a very specific perspective here, but as somebody who, if you are a leader in a company, I mean, this is the great news is that more women are in positions of leadership and power than ever before, which is amazing. But if you are a woman in a position of power with some leverage, with some influence, start the conversation. Even if the conversation starts at the water cooler, even if the conversation starts in the lunchroom and it's not an official request for any kind of anything, just start the conversation with other people, normalize the fact that this is actually totally okay to talk about. And then from there, maybe you can get a little bit of groundswell going, and you can approach the HR department, for example, and ask them if they've ever considered putting a wellness program. You can bring the statistics to them. You can take a look at the demographics of your company and figure out how many women in the company right now are probably in perimenopause or menopause, just based on their age. And, that I think would probably be quite compelling in most companies now to bring that information forward. I think we have to get creative about this. And honestly, I mean, I'm going to sound like a raging feminist here, which I don't mean to, but I kind of do. I think that if we're waiting for men to do this, it's not going to happen. So
they have no investment in it.
What's that?
There's no investment.
No. Yeah, no. And
there's no known investment, because what probably companies don't realize, sorry to jump in there, but I think probably what companies don't realize is that they, without supporting women, the companies will suffer from a financial perspective. And I think you had some numbers, Afsoon, in your white paper around that. Yes. Can you repeat those for us?
There are some percentages. I go back and take a look, and in line with that, before I retrieve those numbers, is that I think when we're talking about this, because we do have different, when we're looking at, let's say, inclusion and equity, like now this is a topic that I think, to me, this may be a better anchor to start rather than, HR definitely, they do look at many different areas. Like they say, okay, we do health and wellness for different communities, we do this yoga class, we do this, whatever it is that they are, providing. But then again, when we're coming to this, I think that inclusion and equity part would be a nice place to approach. And, if we imagine this being a marginalized group, as I mentioned, in the workplace, I think the understanding should be that this is not just any other marginalized group. If you have 40% of your employees as women, basically whatever you start supporting, if you start supporting the group that are in menopause, basically it means that you're supporting all of the 40%, because the rest of them are on their way to the stage, right?
Right.
So basically, and these are women, and these women are really the most experienced because they've been around for many years. If I think companies really open their eyes and they take a look at what valuable resource these women are, they are potentially influencers. They are, because of their experience, everybody goes to them for advice, for feedback, for information, for guidance. And the more help we provide these women, the more help actually be provided for basically raising the whole companies, just for performance and ability. And I think, empowering these women really helps them to work better, to be more productive. And at the same time, they can be guidance to the rest of the women who are coming through as, they also getting to that stage. So I think, maybe that vision is not still there, but it's just amazing. This is just, I think, to me, really the undercurrent is really overwhelming when we're looking at it.
Yeah, I love that. So the inclusion and diversity committee, if there is one, is a great place to start. And as you were talking, I, again, having been in the corporate world, know that a lot of the motivation for change is always connected to the bottom dollar. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, not only the lost productivity issues that Sarah was referencing, but also there is great value in this from a hiring and retention perspective too. And it's something to think about, when younger women are being recruited, and they're asking questions about how do you support women in the workplace? How do you support women through, for example, through the childbearing years? How do you support women through perimenopause and menopause? I expect as this conversation gets bigger, which it is, it's becoming more and more mainstream, those will be the questions that will be being asked by the younger women coming into these corporations. So there's great value there, I think, as well. That's my 2 cents.
Absolutely, yes. And, as far as financials, they say that we have $1 trillion every year on, turnover. And we see a lot of women, they're hesitant to go up to the next stage just because, they feel like they don't have that confidence that they used to have. I think Sarah very, nicely initially talked about it, that, it's just the confidence may not be there. And, the amount of money that is being spent on healthcare costs is like over 300 million, is being in the US, and, for the 12 months period as they looked at. So this is the study by a Yale University. So,
and what's this? So just to clarify, so that the $1 trillion is the amount of money lost because of turnovers in this age demographic with women?
Because of turnover overall, but then again, we have such big community of women as we are looking at. They are really, they don't go after what it is that they could. I mean, there's so much potential that, it's not, and we can see it in the board members' seats, in the CEO and C-suite. There is, they don't have anything less to offer that a man would, but, you can see that women at this time of their life, other than all of these hormonal, physical, mental, emotional changes that they go through, at the same time, they are kind of in the sandwich situation generation as well. So they have their children going off to college or in high school. Usually they have their parents or their elderly that they are sort of either physically caring for or emotionally. It's a lot of engagement to provide care for them. And everything else that they are, just thriving to get to the next step in their workplace as well. So just imagine the enormous amount of pressure that women are under. So many women, they just opt out at that point, it's just, and I think they feel really betrayed by their body. Sometimes they say, I don't know what's happening to me, but it's just your level of confidence. It doesn't allow you to get into those higher seats. So let's support these women and this brilliant resources of energy. I call them source, they're like the heart. Women are the heart of the family, heart of any society that they get in. And it's just an amazing, time in their lives that it has to really, we need to realize. And I think, stop sleepwalking, whoever is in charge, and start looking at, we need to provide this and start this conversation really seriously.
Yeah, I love that. Sarah was talking about that the last time we chatted about this. She was saying, I think, Sarah, you said like you'd love the statistics on how many women opt into early retirement as a result of just the cumulative impact of all those things you were talking about, the burnout, all the caregiving responsibilities between aging parents and maybe also still parenting kids, and then increased pressures and responsibilities on the job as a result of, moving up the ladder. And then on top of that, all the menopause and hormonal stuff, right? So I love that. And I love that idea of really starting to value the role that women are playing at that level, and imagine what could be possible if more of them were moving up. I think that's fantastic. So one of the things that, Sarah, you had a couple questions specifically around like practical ways to start this conversation going. We've talked about a couple of them.
Yeah, I was thinking about, if it was my job to go in and support women, I would create scripts. I know you talk a lot about scripts, Wendy, around, creating scripts for creating boundaries and being able to say no. And it made me think about, creating scripts so that women had kind of a template about how to, if they felt embarrassed or shy about starting these conversations, how can we help them create scripts around that? And the second part of my question was, if I was a woman working in the corporate world, which I'm not, and I can, I sit with my patients and actually just tell them if I'm having a hot flash, but I'm lucky because I can do that. what, as a woman in the workplace, what is one thing that I can do tomorrow to help encourage this conversation at work and also support myself, like from the corporate perspective? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so I think to me, when looking at the workplace platform, just because the days are so jam-packed, and, my experience of working with my clients that are, high-level executives or leaders, that they need to, they're busy women that they, you can't tell them, okay, or at the same situation in the workplace, you don't want to leave your desk for an hour and do something and come back. These have to be really strategies that are, they can start incorporating, as you mentioned, tomorrow. These are the things that as women, we need to start taking that responsibility. And first, the awareness of knowing there is an art and science of changing the narrative and navigating this time. So understanding that it's possible, and the myth that everything is down the hill after menopause, we're just going to have to put that aside. That's not true. So let's start take responsibility and start learning those little strategies or tools that can help us, even if we have like 30 seconds at one go, like when we're sitting at the desk. And these are the things that I guide my clients with, that, you're sitting down to start your project that you have at hand, and then just kind of make this into segments that you can give yourself, like every half an hour, every 45 minutes, depending on what you're planning for the next hour or so. Bring those little practices that, and just because they're very busy and, everything, these are practices that are stacked. In that 30-second, we can do a few things at a time. It just helps with breath, with movement, with eye gaze, with, kind of breaking that cycle of stress. So if they do have those strategies that don't take too long also, then they can kind of bring them during the day. And, the ideal situation for me to see is that women actually take charge and start using these during the day and become role model really for the rest, and say, I'm starting to bring this in. And hopefully down the road, employers, once they bring in these programs to work, they start basically rewarding and encouraging taking those little steps during the day and really creating that community of support. But until then, I think we should start, just putting aside the kind of, I would think, sometimes we say just feeling like we are like the victimhood. I don't want to say that, in a way that is something that people may experience, but sometimes we may feel that, everything else is out of our control, but we might have those little pockets of time that we can control and we can claim. And these are just little tiny breaks that we can take and start taking care of our health, gradually, and do the best that we can. And, just again, start the conversation when possible.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, Sarah and I are a big fan of both of us, I think, of this idea of like stacking small changes, because that's how we do best as humans at making change. And I think just to add, the layer onto that is that, I think it would be easy for that to be happening in secret. And I think what I am really passionate about and want to just get going is a conversation around how we bring this out into the open. And this is not something that we don't talk about. It's something that we start talking about more. So, if you are doing that at your desk, I think the first step in this is find somebody you are comfortable talking to about this. So if you're not comfortable talking to a supervisor or an HR person or, your male counterpart, who are you comfortable in the office talking to about this, and have the conversation with them. And the conversation might be as simple as saying, hey, this is happening to me. Is this happening to you? And, it doesn't need to be in any way a battle cry for some kind of big transformation in the workplace right now. But I think you have to start the conversation. We just need to start talking about it. And the more people you talk to about this, the more that legitimizes the conversation and the bigger the conversation gets. I think absolutely, if you are in that position of influence and you are comfortable starting this conversation at a higher level, do it. And if you're not, I get that too. But talk about it. Talk about these things that Afsoon is talking about, like, and all of the things that Sarah and I talk about on this podcast around proactive things that you can do to help manage your stress, reduce the likelihood of burnout, things that you can do in the moment to help manage hot flashes and get through them. Talk about those things because that will legitimize them in the workplace as well.
Absolutely. And start requesting, as you mentioned, there are wellness programs already that are being, rolled out in the workplace. Just to start putting those requests, say right. This is something that we could use. So maybe you just have a few of your colleagues that you feel like you may, benefit from this and get that incorporated.
Yeah. Do a survey. I mean, if you're in the HR department, I know there are lots of people who listen to this podcast who are HR professionals. If you're in the HR world, this feels like a really great thing to put in a survey. You've probably got, hopefully 50% of your employees are women. I think this would be a really great question to ask. Are you interested in learning more about this? What are you interested in? Get some feedback on that. I mean, it's hard to argue with that at a higher level. If you've got a survey that says, most of our female employees are really interested in learning more about this, and most of our female employees say this is impacting them. I think that that's incredibly powerful information. So I think really what we're coming to in this discussion is that we don't have the answers, but that it probably requires some pretty serious creative thinking to get this thing going. So we really appreciate your thoughts on this today. Thank you so much for joining us. I will absolutely put the link to that white paper in the show notes. I'll get that for you. So if anyone's interested in reading that, they can get that there. And is there somewhere else, if people are looking for more information on you or want to learn a little more, where they can go?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me for the first, it was amazing just to sit with you and Sarah and just kind of start the conversation as we talked about. This has to really become more and more out there so we can hear about it. But thanks for asking. I do have my website, rivas.com, and I'm on social media and LinkedIn. So watch for, what's coming up, because there is a project that I'm actually basically unfolding at the beginning of this year coming up, which is a community that it's by invitation and it's by basically application that I'm bringing in people that are in the executive and in the leadership in the workplace, because we talked about how, we need to bring in the decision makers, to kind of talk. So bring them in, kind of, have some understanding of what it is that we can do to change and to transform lives. And hopefully we can kind of trickle from top down. So that is something that is coming up. So please watch for that. And I would love to have an amazing group of women coming in and help co-create this for all of us that we can benefit. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
it was our pleasure. And I will put the Rivas website as well in the show notes. So both of those things will be there. So that's fantastic. And I look forward to seeing how that program unfolds. That sounds fantastic. Sarah, did you have any last words?
No more words. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Afsoon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Hi there. If today's episode has got you wondering where you are in your own hormonal journey, you'll want to download our perimenopause checklist now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. This free checklist is the first step to getting informed and taking back some control over your midlife. Get yours now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. That's PERICHECKLIST.